historically remained low. It's much lower than the national or average literacy rates for women. Also, if you look at female students in social sciences and humanities, in both senior secondary education and universities, you see that there are more females actually in social sciences and humanities in senior secondary education than say in science or commerce and management. Now, if you also know that science there's more employment and better pay, then of course that there are lower numbers for women in science or management and commerce, then shows that of course women are obviously earning less and maybe also be unemployed, because Sri Lanka also has this phenomenon of the unemployed arts graduate. We put out a lot of arts graduates, and there's a significant proportion of them unemployed, and if there are more women than men in the arts stream, that means more unemployed in the arts stream. Now, the question of course is, why do females gravitate towards art subjects? So we can talk of course very generally about the gains of women, but we also have to ask, why are women gravitating towards art subject? Why aren't they going for science? Why aren't they going for commerce and management? Is it physiology? Is it socialization? Or is it unequal access to senior secondary science education that leads to this choice? Now, in the case of Sri Lanka, the schools offering senior secondary instruction in science streams are much fewer than the number of schools offering the arts stream or social sciences and humanities, right? So if you look at the number of schools, 716 schools offer senior secondary science education, but in comparison, 2005 schools offer just social science and humanities education. So you see then the schools are unevenly distributed, and of course there are then hidden costs. Parents may have hidden costs entailed in sending them to these schools, transport, safety issues, tuition, various things might be coming in, because private tuition, despite the fact that education in the schools is free, I think a lot of parents are also going for private tuition, especially for senior secondary science education, because they all want their children to become doctors and engineers or whatever, So there is a hidden cost. That may be the reason that more females are gravitating towards arts subjects. Now, other factors that have a depressing effect on the gains made, there's the gender wage gap that has been mentioned. There is still, especially where women are crowded at work, that there is a wage gap. Occupational segregation. Historically, some professions have been dominated by women rather than by men, like nursing and teaching, and there, of course, the wages remain low. And also, feminization of high-wage professions has also seen a kind of a gender basis. For instance, to take medical profession, we see that in a study of post-intern doctors, it was found that fewer female doctors were going for postgraduate training. There is also a higher dropout rate among female doctors from postgraduate training, and also there are more male specialists than female specialists, and also there's a preference among specialists, female specialists for certain kinds of professions, like venereology or dermatology, which are considered less demanding than surgery or something. So the reason, of course, is family commitments. Now, similar situation can also be seen in the Sri Lankan academia. I think somebody talked about professors. Now you can see, that there are more women, crowding the lecturer, senior lecturer, which are the lower ranks, as opposed to professor and associate professor. And this can, I think, this is actually observable in faculty like arts, where traditionally there have been more women, and also faculty of engineering, where there are traditionally fewer women than males. In both, you can see that the numbers are the same. I'll be done here. Give me a couple of minutes. The numbers are basically the same, more in the lower categories than in the higher categories. Now, what explains the situation in academia? And one of two explanations is possible: either that women are unable or unwilling to move up as quickly as men along the career ladder, or we can ask whether this is a time lag. Maybe women come into the academic profession, which has been traditionally masculine, later, and therefore maybe with time they might move up. Although I tend to think that there is a gender dimension why there are more women in the lower categories. Now, the reason for voluntary curtailment in career aspirations, the dominant stereotype, of course, of the adult woman in Sri Lanka as well as in the rest of South Asia, but in the rest of Asia, is this idea of the woman as wife, mother and housewife. And this stereotype, I think, is having a depressing effect on women's attempts to go up the careers, especially in the traditionally masculine or male-dominated careers. Women tend to voluntarily impose restrictions on themselves because there's the cultural depiction of women, idealization as wife and mother. There is the depiction of women, career women, as selfish and all that. So all of these things, I think, there's a kind of a self-imposed glass ceiling when it comes to women's career aspirations. Now, of course, there is also the question of the whether education is the only gateway to waged employment. I will not go too much into this, but to remind you that there are women nowadays. I think there are many women who are going into low status, low wage employment categories in Sri Lanka. One, of course, is the apparel manufacturing sector. Maybe Vietnam and Bangladesh are also contenders here. Look at some of the t-shirts you're wearing, it will be made in Sri Lanka. So, and women are overqualified for these jobs. And another category, of course, is housemaids. Women going abroad, especially to Middle East, but now, of course, to Southeast Asia, I think Singapore, Malaysia, and countries like Hong Kong, as housemaids. For these jobs, you don't need an education, and it is low status, low paid, and there are a lot of problems associated with this. So that education as the only gateway, the trajectory between education and wage employment has been somewhat disrupted. Women's political participation, have the high educational gains helped increase the numbers? Again, this question was asked in the earlier session. We can see that though Sri Lanka got universal adult franchise in 1931, the first, I think, country in Asia to get universal adult franchise, but to this day, the participation of Sri Lankan women in formal electoral politics has remained low. So the lowest was in 1960, 1.3%, but in 2010, it's 5.8% only, of men, in the national legislature. We also see this unique feature of women's representation in the three-tier system of governance, which is an inverted pyramid. So there are more women in the national legislature and fewer women in the lowest level tier of governance, which is local government, right? It's only 1.8. And this is, of course, ironic. People were mentioning Indira Gandhi. We know that Sri Lanka produced the world's first elected Prime Minister, Lady Prime Minister in 1960, Srisavarindira Bandaranaike. And between 1994 and 2000, both the posts of Prime Minister and Executive President were held by women in Sri Lanka. And of course that's mother and daughter, we know that, right? Srisavarindira Bandaranaike and her daughter Chandrika Bandaranaike Kumatunga, and of course the reasons are, of course, nepotism or family ties or whatever. But still, the numbers otherwise, women coming up on the basis of merit remain very low, even in electoral politics. So, and there is, of course, education and violence. This is my last slide. High educational indices have not had a significant impact on the incidence of violence against women and girls in Sri Lanka, or even more important, women's attitude to violence. Let me just quote one example, number 2, that I have cited on my slide. The study of a recent study on intimate partner violence among Lankan women found that 58% of women thought beating by the husband was okay. This is a study among women. Found that beating by husbands was okay for at least one of 5 reasons that were given. Now the 5 reasons were things like going out without informing the husband, neglecting the children, burning the food, refusing sexual favors, like 5 reasons like that. And 58% of women thought it was okay. Women thought it was okay, not men. Women thought it was okay. And it was found that education had a marginally positive impact in the sense of bringing down the number of women. So overall 58% of women with 12 years or more of education, it was 42%. So marginal effect, but I would think with 12 years or more of education, it would be zero tolerance for intimate partner violence, but still 42% thought it was okay, right? So you can see that you need to kind of be a little careful about celebrating education. So the conclusion then is it education first but not last? Because education, should we think of education as the last frontier or just one, milestone? So let me quote the Minister of Education who actually proposed the free education measure in 1946. He said if it is going to be a national system of education, let it provide for all the children of the nation. There was no mention of gender anywhere by anybody. When free education was proposed, nobody said it should be only for men and not for women, right? So they were that far-sighted way back when. And then of course you have Malala Yousafzai saying one child, one teacher, one pen, one book at a time. right? This is 2013, she says this. So there is the faith in education, but of course the question I'm asking is, has the positive impact of education been overrated? You know, all of us, anywhere in the world, right? We can ask this question, can deep-rooted gender norms undermine the gains of education in the absence of attempts to address the role of culture in determining women's status? I think the other side, the seamy underside or underbelly of this is culture. You know, can education, formal education in schools, unless it directly addresses culture, cultural norms, can education alone, the school books, texts alone, change the status of women? You know, and Sri Lanka unfortunately is a good example where it has been said maybe a lot more needs to be done. Women may be gaining all these education, PhDs, MAs, MPhils, under BAs, BScs, doctors, engineers, lawyers, but you know, what has been the impact? So is education then of limited potential in transforming the conditions of women's lives? All of us women intellectuals gathered here, I think this is a question for all of us to ask, not only women, men, anybody who is interested in the issue. This is a question we need to ask. So thank you very much. Thank you for your patience and attention. Patience especially for you.